So, Chris, to kick things off, would you mind just telling us about yourself and Firm Media, and also how there might have been a transition from music to the business world involving Google?
So my name is Chris Ohanic. I'm also a little bit of a serial entrepreneur. My wife and I own a couple restaurants in the greater Los Angeles area. We also own a little nonprofit in here that operates here in Southern California, and then also out in Mexico. We do some work in Mexico. I was in the music business for about 10 years. So about 20 years old, I entered the music business as a musician. I was able to record a couple albums. They were not even really one-hit wonders. They got a little bit of regional success. And what ended up happening was in the local music scene in the sort of late 80s, early 90s, if you had a record deal, then you were officially the one that was further along in the business than all of your friends. So because I had done that and I had been in a couple studios and worked with some engineers and worked with some producers, I had a little bit of street cred, I guess, at the time, that helped me to sort of start working with other friends' bands, and people were asking me to go in the studio with them and be a producer and be, whatever. And along the way, what I figured out was as soon as I got into the studio, I realized that I didn't want to be a musician. I wasn't really a musician at heart. I loved being a songwriter, but I also, when I was in the studio, I liked that part. And then I realized, I like the title of executive producer because now I'm just looking for the money and I'm not even having to spend physically work in the studio, right? So when I realized that I was good at being an executive producer, which really meant in the long run that I was good at sales, I jumped into that and I started executive producing albums. Over the course of about a decade, I was fortunate enough to get some funding from a couple different major label sources. I was able to release 35 albums in 3 countries, and one of those albums, I didn't write the music. I want to be very clear about that. But one of the albums that I was fortunate enough to be able to work on won a Grammy. And we came to work. We were going to work on Monday, and we knew that we were pretty good at what we did. And then we were told Monday night that we won a Grammy, and we came to work on Tuesday. The change in the team of people was measurable. Now, I was too young to know what that meant. And as I got older, I realized, being a part of a team and doing really great work and then being told that you've now touched greatness changed me from the inside out. It made me someone who only wanted to do things that were great. It's made me very hard to work with and very hard to work for over the years, but it's also made me very proud of what I do. So the internet comes along. Sometime around the early 2000s, internet becomes a thing. Instead of people sharing music on cassette tapes and messengers running them around Hollywood to deliver them to people, people start sharing music via download. Napster comes along. Most everybody knows that story. But what ended up happening was major labels stopped giving money to independent labels. So this paycheck that I had that was coming in for about a decade went away. And I had to get a real job. So I went to work for the 2 gentlemen that owned the domain names plasticsurgery.com and cosmeticsurgery.com. That gave me an introduction into working with specialty medical practices. I got to go work with about 700 to 750 plastic surgeons nationwide. And I realized very quickly, this was a time where plastic surgeons had their own TV shows. They do now too, but back then it was like the Swan and the Doctors and Dr. 90210 and stuff like that. So there wasn't a big difference between working with rock stars and working with plastic surgeons. And I was able to make that jump. And so I got a bird's eye view of what it was like. When you own the domain name plasticsurgery.com and there's no Google, this is pre-Google, people just searched plasticsurgery.com. So 1 million visitors a month went to that website. And when 1 million visitors a month went to a website, you learned a lot about traffic and behavior and behavioral insights that you couldn't get from analytics back then. So that just gave me a bird's eye view on how to do this. 10 years later, started Firm Media about 16 years ago with $2,000, a Vonage phone line, and a business card for my kitchen table. Today, it is we do digital marketing for plastic surgeons, oral surgeons, basically anyone who cuts, specialty medical, med spas, for 200 practices nationwide. It's about 40 employees here in Southern California office that do that, and then some vendors and strategic partners sprinkled around the country. That's the story.